This is Elizabeth Clare Brewington with Discover Brightside, the video podcast. And I have Sathiesh with me, and we're going to ask him a few questions. But Sathiesh, tell us a little bit about yourself. And I'm going to try to get him as a regular feature on our show. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into some questions.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. Happy to be here. So I'm Sathiesh. I have been working as an engineer and software developer for the past 17 years. I worked in big tech companies on various roles. So right now I'm a principal engineer, an architect, and I focus on the latest technologies, which are the artificial intelligence, all the AI features we see, and I work on the security and protection, data protection side predominantly, trying to make sure that our data is secure when we use this AI applications. And personally, I would love to educate people and then help spread my knowledge, work with a community, and yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah. So let's go through section by section. So let's try to understand if somebody is a business owner who's an entrepreneur, they don't have access to an IT department and somebody protecting them. What are some of the tips that you would advise people to look after their devices and stay safe? I know this web browsing is a new thing too, so let's start with the devices. How can you keep your devices safe?
So I would say, and again, let's take a step back. Like when you say devices, right? Like we need to have fingerprint, facial recognition, or all this kind of regular authentication models that are more biometric oriented. Some people do it. Like if my mom, she will never do it. She will be like, I'll just go with the numbers, right? It is convenient, but at the same time, it is not secure. So when many of the companies introduce this new biometric-oriented, authentication models, I would suggest to go on to that and then enable them in all the devices that you would have. Like if you're running a small business and there are a bunch of devices that in your team uses. So make sure that they're all connected to the internet. They're all updated with the latest softwares, because most times we ignore the software update because that would take the device down for a few minutes, right? Like those updates generally contain some security patches. So anytime keep your devices up to date, and the devices should be authenticated and should be locked with all the security mechanisms and use the biometric settings enabled. So these are some of the things, and one of the primary thing for any device, for any login, right? Like not just a device, any login is MFA. So MFA is a painful thing. We hate it because it sends a text message, and then I have to see the code and put it on my laptop. But the text sometimes takes time if there are any issues with that. So I tend to remember devices. I tend to say always check on the remember device button, or skip the MFA wherever possible. But that is not a good practice, right? And especially when you're running a business, and especially when you have data about any financial data about your business or any of the customers' data. So that builds more to it. So the more data that we collect and the more data that we store, the more secure and the more vicious we should be about keeping the data secure.
So that comes to the next question. How do you keep your data secure?
So yeah, some of the things is like, so it depends on what type of data we collect, right? And most times, if it is just like collecting some people's, again, it depends on the business that we run. So say, for example, if I take a restaurant, right? Most times I collect is just a phone number of the person who calls in, or an email, or any of the DoorDash or all those orders comes in, right? People I have seen do that in restaurants, right? Like when there is an order come in, like somebody calls, they just make a note in a paper and a pen saying that this is the person who's calling, or this is what it is. So those kind of writing it down on a paper itself is a security risk. And again, it's only phone number. It is okay. Who cares? My phone number is public. But still, that is one of the ways that attackers could reach out to me, because every day I get hundreds of text messages, and so many of them are like, I know that they are spam messages and they're scammers or they're hackers in there, right? So The way to protect that, I would say, is like to spend some money and use the software that is built for that purpose, right? Like for taking orders, there are some applications. There is some applications like in every industry that the business owners could use, which are you might have to pay for them, but they would actually not just make the work easier for us to accomplish. It also makes sure that the data is secure, and that is also one of the aspect to look at when we select the softwares, right? Like there may be competing softwares for us to buy in. Like
Yeah.
if I'm going to buy some word editor for me, like there are 3 or 4 different applications, and all of them will say, oh, we will save your information in cloud, don't worry about us, we have everything secure. But are they secure? Right. So
Right.
that analysis needs to be, and I know it is hard for anybody who is not on the technical, who is not a tech savvy, to go and investigate that.
Yeah.
But at least look at their website, like see if they run regular compliance audits. So some of the companies on their websites, they mention that they regularly do SOX compliance or some audits, internal audits. So those are signs that the company who is taking the data and storing in their cloud, they're keeping that data secure. Right.
Yeah, very true. Especially like Messenger, you get so many different versions of messengers and they are viruses. So you really have to be careful. My messages just stopped, when people were trying to do two-step verifications. So I called AT&T and they fixed the problem. So sometimes if you're struggling and you see something suspicious, act on it. Call your provider and just make sure that that you're safe, because they definitely need your phone to do the two-step verification. So you might have a fantastic password and you might be protected, but then the phone is just as important as your device. The other thing is this new thing, which is web browsing. So, okay, so your device is safe, but then when you go on and you're browsing on the internet, and there's some cookies or trackers, or you go to a phishing site that can hack you. What goes on with the browsing? And I know that if you have Gmail or Microsoft, they have settings that you can put on. And then what the problem is that, like, I put strict settings for all my my web browsing, but then I couldn't see any images or videos or anything. So I was like, damn, this is not working either. So how do you balance that web browsing, and how do you stay safe from being browsing into a wrong website?
Right. So that's a very good question, right? And again, I can see what you mentioned, right? Like sometimes we say there is some JavaScript that we don't want to run on the browser. So the moment I turn it off, half of the web page stops working, right? We
It
don't
just
know what else.
stops working.
Everything is
Yeah.
misaligned. So in modern technologies, most of them are those JavaScript enabled, and everything uses cookies. So all this basic settings that we used to have in our browser that we thought that we could control, they are needed for modern applications to run. So
Yeah.
turning them off would just turn everything off, right? So there are some very standard practices that everybody should follow, right? Like even if you're a business owner or if you're using it for your personal purpose, right? There are very standard principles to follow. And in organizations, we call this as a zero trust policy, right? Like this is a common term that industries use. They say zero trust, which is like don't trust anyone, verify every single time, right? So I think that should be applied for personal use cases, personal situations as well. So what I would say is when you get an email, right? Like and the email says that okay, you know what, you are you need to click on this link. The phishing emails, a regular phishing email, saying that oh, there is Apple has shipped you your device. Click here to just do the tracking. You might think I did not even order. Where is the shipment? And then just click on that. So, and if you look at the URL, so one good thing is when you move your browser over the URL on an email or something, at the bottom corner left corner, you could see a small pop-up showing that what the URL would look like. So that URL, if it is having like kind of fancy things, not a proper domain. So everything after the domain is going to be anyways crazy
Yeah.
numbers. But if the domain itself is looking like a fishy thing, you should probably be vigilant
Yeah.
about that, right? And on the web, when we go onto the web, every time look at the URL. When you type in the URL, the very first beginning of it should be green, right? Like the browsers, modern browsers do that. Like they secure HTTPS secure, and then they check that, okay, this is a trusted site. If the site is not trusted, the browser is going to warn you, and it says like, you know what, don't go. You only enter in if you know what you're doing, right? And those are the some of the things that already modern applications and modern browsers stop us from doing, right? But again, still phishing emails, be one of the predominant ways that hackers and attackers get into us, right? And nowadays with AI, those emails are very convincing. Earlier, the emails used to have misspelled characters, they used to have misplaced images, but now the emails look really legit. So I go to the sender. So when I get an email, I do this. I click on the sender, and the sender's address, I check that if that address is valid. Sometimes I see that address is like exactly valid as well. It says something like google.com, and I'm like,
Yeah,
it cannot be wrong. But I do see that they use a different type of a font, and they replace O with a zero or an L with a one or something like that. So when you look at the for human eyes, for the size of the font, it will look like it is real. But when you take that and then put it in the, just go to Google and then search, I got an email from this address. Is this legit? Can I open it? So any email that you're not expecting that looks suspicious, even though the email looks beautiful, I will look at the sender and then I will go in and then I'll ask, okay, you know what? I see some email like this. Is this real? I see a sender. Is this valid? So sometimes, for example, right, I would get an email saying that updates dash for customer.bestbuy.com. I'm like, I know that is Best Buy because it has the domain, but I still want to make sure that the entire thing is right. So I take the entire address, ask Google, like, is this really a Best Buy company's email address? And if that verifies, that's like, okay, now what, one step of verification for me, right? So these are some of the things that we'll have to be always careful. But like zero trust, don't
yeah,
trust
yeah.
anything that you get, right?
Also, if you misspell a name, like, when you're typing, you're Googling something, it can definitely take you to the hacker. And also, if you misdial a phone number, like especially a 1-800 number, it's happened to me a couple of times that I dialed a number thinking I was talking to somebody, but then the number went somewhere else. So you always need to double check all the time because it could be anything, and they come up with new things every day. So you might be thinking I'm confident now, and then there's some new hacker or some new thing that's come out. So
So
this
yeah,
is good advice, and common sense plays a big role as well. So be careful and always check everything. So, Satish, I'm going to end this interview, but I would like to bring you back and do an ask questions with my audience as well. But thank you so much. This has been a delight, and just help everybody. To just be stronger and smarter, because even big corporations with all the money in the world, with all the security, get hacked. So if you did get hacked, it's normal, and just work with it and just figure it out, and stay safe. That's the main thing. So thank you for watching Discover Brightside. So